Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to be creating a 2025 thumbnail design. Now we're nearing the end of the year, so what better way than to create a thumbnail which signifies that. I had an idea to create this sort of thumbnail earlier in the year, but it was too early, so now that we're in November it's the perfect time to create something like this. Now if you're a fan of Iman Kasi, you will have seen that he's posted a thumbnail like this, so we're gonna just take some inspiration from his thumbnail and just add our own spice to it. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into the video. So let's create a new file and let's keep the dimensions to 1920 by 1080, keep all the other options the same and click create. So as always, let's start off by creating the background. Now what I have here is an image of a background which I found on FreePic, and I will link this in the description down below. So I'm just going to drag this into my canvas like so, and we just want this to fit the screen completely. So let's just press Command or Control T to transform, and let's just scale it up ever so slightly. Zoom back in to something like this. Just make sure that the whole canvas is completely filled. Perfect. Now let's just rename this to background. So just double click on the layer and rename it background. And now let's just make some adjustments to this background. So the first thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to desaturate all of the colors in this background. So how we can do this is simply by pressing Command or Control, Shift and U. That's just going to remove all the colors from the background. Once you've done that, we will now also just blur this background because we do not want it to take too much of the viewer's attention. So let's just first right click on the background, convert it to Smart Object, go to Filter, and then we will go to Blur and Gaussian Blur. From here, let's just make some adjustments. So we want to keep it to around 12 pixels. Let's just do that, click OK. And now as you can see, there is really not much detail in the actual background. We removed a lot of it, but it's good to have a subtle view of some background elements. Let's also now just add some color to the background. So I don't want this to be completely black and white. We're going to add a little blue / purplish tint to this background. So let's just go to the adjustment layers. Let's go to hue and saturation, and let's now just add a clipping mask. So just hold Alt or Option in between the two layers and then click like so, and that will create a clipping mask. Now from here we can click on colorize and let's just adjust these sliders. So I'm just going to adjust the saturation, maybe make the background slightly darker, increase the saturation, and sort of bring the hues to a more bluish purplish color. To something like this would do the trick. Maybe we can increase the saturation a little bit more and just decrease the darkness. Something like this looks just fine. Okay, so once you've completed that step, it's now time to add a subject into the canvas. Now for you guys who are following along with this tutorial, I do encourage that at this point you go ahead and take an image of yourself. Just get involved and it'll help you just understand the process of thumbnail design. Because what you have to understand, guys, is you're not always going to have an image which is just posed perfectly for your thumbnail. Sometimes you're going to have to take initiative, whether it be making your own pose or just asking the client to do a certain pose for the thumbnail design. So while you're practicing, getting involved in the process as best as you can helps you understand the thumbnail design process even better. Okay, so once you've added in the subject, the next step will be to add in the text. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press T for the type tool, and I'm just going to simply type in 2025. Now the font that I'm going to be using is Bebas New Regular, and let's just type in 2025. I'm just going to press Escape, and I'm just going to change the color to white so I can see what I'm working with. I've also kept the tracking, guys, to 140, as you can see right here. And what the tracking essentially is, guys, is the spacing between the characters. So for example, if I just increase the tracking, you will see that these become more spaced out. So I'm just going to press Command or Control Z to undo that. And let's now press Command or Control T, and I'm just going to resize this. So hold down Alt or Option and Shift, and you can just drag it from any corner like so. Let's just increase the size and place it on the canvas. Something like this should do for now. Let's also make sure to place this behind the subject. So drag the layer and bring it behind the subject layer. Okay, so we're making good progress. Now it's time to add some text effects to our characters. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to add those text effects, and I'll be right back in just a moment with all of the settings you need to follow in order to recreate the same result. Okay guys, so as you can see, I've added in my text effects. So let's run through all of those settings so you can achieve the same result. So the first step is to add a bevel and emboss. So let's just click on bevel and emboss, and here are the settings you need to follow. Once you have completed that step, you will now need to add an inner glow to your text. So here are the settings you need to follow, and I will provide you with the hex code for the color of the inner glow. Moving on, you will also need to add a gradient overlay to your text. So I'm just going to click on the gradient slider, and you will have the first color set to location 25 and the final color at the location 100, which is at the far right. And I will provide you with the hex codes for these colors down below. Once you've done that, the final step, guys, will be to add an outer glow. So again, just pause this video and copy the settings you see on screen. Okay guys, looking good. So one quick adjustment that I want to make is I just want to decrease the spacing between these two characters, the 2 and the 5. As you can see, there's a lot of negative space here in comparison to the spacing between these two characters. So what we can actually do, just to double check and confirm, is just create a rectangle. So let's just quickly do this and just fill it with red, press enter, and I'm just going to move this over here. As you can see, we have a bit more negative space here, so we can bring this 5 more to the left. I'm just going to delete that, and I'm now just going to click on the marquee tool, and I will just drag over the 5 like so, and then press V for the move tool, and we will just move this ever so slightly. This will come up because we need to rasterize the layer, so just click OK. So let's just right click on the text layer, rasterize type, and that's just going to allow us to maneuver the text without affecting any of the effects which we've added to the text. So now we can press V for the move tool once again, and now it's just a matter of moving the type closer in like so to something like this. Perfect. Now I'm just going to move this slightly to the right, and again guys, this is just visual inspection, so just make sure you are looking at your work and seeing what things need to be aligned or improved. Okay, so now I'm going to add a drop shadow to the subject just to help create some separation from the background. So what I'm going to do is just double click on the subject layer, go to drop shadow, and we will now just adjust the settings of it. So let's first just change the blending mode back to normal, and let's just play with these settings. So I want the opacity to be quite high. Yeah, as you can see, there's some separation happening over here, and let's just play with the size. Yeah, to something like this. Now you don't want it to be overpowering and absolutely large like this, so just keep it relatively within sort of 50 pixels. So let's say something like this should do the trick. Let's just click OK, keep the opacity to 88. And now I just want to remove some of that drop shadow from certain parts of the subject. So to do that, let's just right click on drop shadow right here. So right click and then create a layer. That's just going to put the drop shadow onto its own separate layer. Just click OK, and as you can see, the drop shadow is now on its own layer. What we can do from here is just create a layer mask like so, and then let's just press B for the brush tool, increase the size of the brush, and make sure to have the color set to black because we want to conceal some parts of this drop shadow. So now make sure that your flow is set to 100, opacity set to 100, and just paint over the parts where you don't want that drop shadow to be. So for me, I just don't want it to be over here. I just want to keep it where the text is so that it just creates some separation between the text and the subject. So we can remove it from the bottom parts like this. Look, that's looking really good. Perfect. Now if I just toggle between before and after, as you can see, that's the difference a drop shadow makes. It just creates a separation which looks really good. Now it's time to add the bar in the bottom region right here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are going to click on the rectangle tool. We have the fill set to red. Do not worry about that. We will adjust that in just a moment. Let's now just create a rectangle, a long rectangle like this, and have the width be something like 40 pixels. 39 will be fine. Let's place this above the subject like so, and now let's just round the edges of the rectangle. So let's go to the corner options right here, and all you need to do is just simply drag it until it hits the max option. So when you keep dragging like so, once you let go, it will take it to the maximum it could possibly go, and if you have the link set, it will just add that value into all of the corner options. So for visual reference, guys, this will be the shape of the bar, but we are not actually going to have any fill at the moment. So what I will do is I'll just remove the fill. Perfect. Let's just double click on the rectangle layer, and I will now click on gradient overlay. From here, let's just click into it. We need to adjust the sliders of the gradients, and I'll show you what I mean. So first of all, let's just drag this to the far left. like so. And now I'll just explain something to you guys who don't already know how the gradient slider works. So any colors at the bottom of the gradient bar signify the actual color that you want to use. On the top, however, you are simply working with black and white values and anything in between. And what the values on top signify is opacity. So if the color on top is completely black, what that means is 100% opacity. And you can see that right here. So any color underneath will show at 100% opacity. If the color, however, on the top is set to white, and we can just do this by dragging the opacity all the way to 0. As you can see, it's white now. This removes the opacity completely from anything within this region on the bottom of the gradient slider. So I've explained this, guys, just so you have an understanding of what I'm doing right now. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to adjust the colors of both of these at the bottom. So let's go ahead and just change this to a dark gray color. Don't worry if it doesn't show on the bar right now. We are just adjusting the colors, and we are going to change this to a sort of lighter version of that gray. So something like this should be fine. Perfect. Now let's just click OK, and we now need to adjust the settings right here. So let's go to Style and adjust it to Reflected. And now, as you can see, it's transparent in the middle, but we have color on both sides of the bar. And just make sure, guys, that you keep the angle to 90 degrees, otherwise it will just be a mess. And I'll just show you what I mean. As you can see, the effect doesn't work. So let's just put this back to 90 degrees, and it creates the illusion of a bar which just needs to be filled. So what I'm going to do right now, before I even continue, is just decrease the opacity. Let's take this down to maybe something like 75%. I think that looks good. Now, guys, I just want to round off the corner of this bar. As you can see, it's just transparent. I just want to add a little bit of an edge just to signify that it's a round bar, or it has a round edge. So what we can do is we are just going to press Command or Control on the rectangle layer and just click like so to create a selection, and then you must right click on the rectangle layer, and then we will just click on rasterize layer style. That's going to allow us now to paint within this selection. So what we will do now is press B for the brush tool. Let's just make our brush size the correct size, and now let's just source the exact same color. So hold down Alt or Option and click on the gray right here, and now we will just paint on the edges like so. And now when you press Command or Control D, as you can see, we have just rounded off the bar. Looking good. Now, guys, we didn't round off the left hand side of the bar because this will be filled in completely, so we don't need to worry about that. We are only worrying about the right hand side because this part of the bar will be empty. So we want to make sure that it has a round edge and actually looks like an empty bar. So let's just rename this layer to bar, and now let's just fill it in. So what we will do, guys, is we are just going to simply zoom in like so. Let's get the rectangle tool and let's just zoom in closer, and now let's just create a square which emulates the exact same width and dimensions. So something like this should be fine for now. Then all you need to do is just drag it out a little bit and round the corners by just simply sliding until you no longer can, and it will just take you to the maximum that it can go to. And then it's just a matter of dragging it until it reaches the very beginning. Something like this will be perfect. Now if I just change the color, for example, to a red, you can now see, guys, that we have just simply duplicated the shape and added fill to it. And now it looks as if it's actually filling in the bar. Now what we are going to do, guys, is we are actually going to drag it even more so to the right because we want to give off the impression that it's nearly 2025 and now it's November. So let's bring this all the way down here. Something like this would signify in this case that it's nearly 2025. November would probably be somewhere right here. And now, guys, we need to add a gradient overlay to this red. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm just going to double click on gradient overlay. Let's change the style to linear once more. And now we are just going to adjust the settings which we have previously just edited. So let's remove the white by just simply dragging up like that to remove it. Let's make sure that both of the colors are black at the top. And now, guys, let's just have a darker red at the bottom and then add a more vibrant red on the right hand side to something like this. Perfect. We can even just drag this more to the right. So that's to location 28. Let's click OK. And let's also add an outer glow to the bar. So let's just click on outer glow and let's just change the color to a red. So let's just take this to red. Let's make sure that the blending mode is set to normal. And now let's just play with the sliders until we get the desired result. So we want this to be quite vibrant and quite well spread. So let's just increase the size. Let's just increase the opacity as well. Don't overdo it though, guys, because then it will just look like a blur. So let's just have this maintain its shape somewhat. So let's keep this 240 opacity. Maybe we can just decrease the opacity a little bit more. 30 opacity does the trick. As you can see, it adds enough glow as it is. If we click OK and just toggle between the before and after, you can see that that's enough glow for this bar. Okay, so let's just rename this to fill, just to keep organized, guys. And now it's time to focus on the little details in order to enhance the thumbnail. So we have our composition set, we have everything in place. Now it's just about adding in a couple more elements just to spice up the thumbnail. So what I will do first of all, guys, is I'm going to add some light to the top of the text just to enhance the glow effect. So first, let's go ahead and create a new layer above our text layer. So our text layer is over here. Let's create a new layer on top like so. And now let's just press B for the brush tool, increase the size of the brush, and we are going to hold down Alt or Option and source a color from the top of the text like so. Make sure again, guys, that you have a soft brush, so have the hardness set to 0 and that you have your flow set to 100 and opacity set to 100. Perfect. Now let's just increase the size of the brush and just paint over the text like so. So just paint over with dabs like this. Now it looks like a mess, guys, but what we are going to do is change the blending mode to overlay. Perfect. And let's just now adjust the opacity and bring this down to about 75%. And as you can see, guys, if I just toggle between before and after, you can see that we've enhanced the glow on the top of the text just to make it stand out a little bit more. At this stage, I'm also just going to adjust the position of the bar and just bring it down a little bit to something like this. Okay, that looks good. And now I will just add a texture overlay to the background just to spice up the background a little more. So here I have an image of a texture overlay which I will be using. Let's just drag this into our canvas and we want to place this behind the text. So just make sure that wherever you place it, it is below the text layer. From here, let's just press Command or Control T to transform, and let's just increase the size ever so slightly until it all fits on the screen. Then let's just change the blending mode to screen, and then let's just adjust the position of the overlay. So let's just bring it down a little bit to something like this. Then the last step will be to create a hue and saturation adjustment layer and then add a clipping mask, clipping it to the overlay. From here, let's just click on colorize, and now let's adjust the sliders. So we want it to have the same color, but let's just increase the saturation and maybe just decrease the darkness ever so slightly. We can even probably take it up a little bit more to something like this. Again, with the colors, you can always adjust them later, so do not worry if you don't have the perfect shades of color right now. Okay guys, so now we move on to the final step, which you may have guessed, which is the camera raw filter. So what I'm going to do is just click on the top layer, and then I'm just going to press Command, Option, Shift and E, and that's just going to merge all the layers within the layers panel into one layer. From there, I'm just going to right click and convert this to a smart object, and then let's go to filter and camera raw filter. And now let's just take our thumbnail to the next level. So we're going to start off in the light section, and let's start off by just increasing the exposure to, let's say, 0.15. Let's increase the contrast. Yeah, that looks good. So let's increase this to, let's say, plus 15 will do the trick. Let's also see if we can increase the highlights. Maybe we can take this up a little bit to maybe plus 5. We can play with the shadows, bring them down a little bit. So we can take this to minus 10. Let's move into color. So let's go into color and let's just adjust the temperature and let's bring it more to a sort of bluish tint. So let's just bring it more to the left. Let's see how that looks. Minus 8, or let's do minus 7. Minus 7 will do the trick. Let's also increase the vibrance. So let's just take this to plus 10. Let's see if we can increase the saturation. Let's just take this to plus 3. Let's also go into effects now and increase the texture. So let's take this up to plus 10. Let's increase the clarity as well. So let's take this to plus 10. Let's also increase the grain. So let's just take this up to, let's say, plus 15. Plus 15 does the trick. And now let's go into curve and create a little S curve. So let's just take a point up like so, and then just bring a point down like this. And that's just going to help increase the contrast. Let's now move into detail and increase the sharpening. So let's just see what we can do here. So let's just take this up to +10, not too much. Now let's move into calibration and let's just see if we can adjust the colors and get a better color overall. So let's just zoom out and let's just adjust the hues of the blue primary. So let's just adjust these hues and see if we can get a better color. So off the bat, I can see that if I move it more to the right, we can get a nice purplish color, which looks better in my opinion. Let's just take it more to the right and just decrease the saturation ever so slightly. Looking good now. I think I might just go back to curve. So let's just open up curve and I'm going to click on the blues and I just want to increase the blues a little bit more. So let's just take this up and see what happens. Yep, just take it up ever so slightly. Maybe we can move it from here as well. Just take it more to the left ever so slightly. Yep, that works very well. Perfect. Now let's just click OK. So as you can see guys, this is before camera filter and this is after. Now I'm nearly done guys, but I just have one more thing to do. So what I want to do is add a vignette and I don't want to do it via camera raw filter. I just want to manually add it in so that we don't interfere with the text. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new layer on top. I'm going to press B for the brush tool, increase the size of the brush and make sure that it's a soft brush. Make sure you have the flow set to 100%. And now let's just change the color to black. Now let's just zoom out a little bit. And now I just want to manually paint in a vignette. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to decrease the flow to, let's say, 50%. And now I'm just going to paint in some dark highlights into the corners, just to bring the focus to the central part of the thumbnail. Yeah, like this. Looking good. And again guys, if you've done too much, you can always go back in with the eraser tool, just increase the size of that brush, and then you can just lightly dab to remove. So let's just press B again, and let's just try and add some more in. I think this is pretty good, in all honesty. This is pretty good. Let's just toggle between before and after, and as you can see, it makes a huge difference. And now with the added vignette, the viewer's attention will be more focused on the actual subject or the central part of the thumbnail. Let's just lower the opacity of this ever so slightly. We don't want it to be too strong. Let's also change the blending mode to luminosity to maintain some of the color on the background. As you can see, we still maintain it, although it just becomes a little darker on the edges. This is looking pretty good. Maybe we can increase the opacity to 90%. Yeah, that looks really good. And just to top things off, let's just add a little bit of hue and saturation. So go on adjustment layers, click on hue and saturation. No need for a clipping mask. Let's just increase the saturation a little bit more. Let's take this up to +11. And there you have it guys, a 2025 thumbnail. Now if you enjoyed this tutorial and you want to see more just like this one, make sure to subscribe to my channel because I will be posting tutorials just like this weekly. Thank you very much guys for watching this video, and until next time, peace.